Sabrina 2000s comic issue 60. If it weren't for her orange hair, Hilda would look unrecognizable here. She says she'll warp to the magic realm with Sabrina for her first interview with the council. Why the fuck are they suddenly calling the other realm by a different name, as of this comic? Did the writer think he didn't alienate the audience enough? It is a good name for the realm. It's the most descriptive name. Anyways, she wants to try to run for a place on the Witches' Council. This is a little interesting, but it comes out of nowhere that she'd want to do that. And she's just one person. So what difference would it make in a positive sense if she was on the council? It goes without saying that they look awful in this panel. But if I point out every single panel where the characters looked awful, the reviews would be 10 times too long. Since when is a queen not named Enchantra in charge of the Witches' Council? And of course, Sabrina doesn't notice that this is different. The writer is literally only writing for the people who aren't fans of the issues before the manga art style. Anyone else would realize the writer's not even trying to respect continuity. It wouldn't be so confusing if the comic started without having Landra in its first story. Am I supposed to believe Sabrina alone rewrote the universe and history? She sure was powerful. At least explain that Enchantra got fired. Hilda says that one of the oldest council members just retired, but she doesn't say it's Enchantra, and that's why she's one of the people applying for the position. She wants to make the other realm a better place. It would be common sense if we actually saw that, and something good came out of her getting the position, and nothing bad. Sabrina lampshades that this is a side of Hilda she's never seen before, wanting to do something important. After all that talking, a letter gets sent to Sabrina, and the council wants her to meet one of them, but they don't explain why in the letter for some reason. Hilda thinks that they want to use her as a reference. Sabrina says she has class pretty soon, and for some reason Salem tries to scare her into thinking the council will turn her into a cat. She did give him a terrible new look, so why wouldn't he resent her? We see a purple castle, and the council member with a stupid name says that it's her job to make sure the witches aren't abusing their powers in any way. If that's actually the council's job, they're doing a terrible job. Because Sabrina's abused her powers plenty of times throughout the comic and didn't get punished. And yet after all the times she abused her magic, the one they're picking a fight with her for is the time she used spell freeze. Even though she didn't mean to not cast it properly. And you'd think the council would understand why she was doing that because Shinji was showing off its magic in front of mortals. They would know the context if they spied on her enough to know that she did that. If anything, you'd expect the council to do that to him. Successfully. All she really did to Shinji was the same thing she did to Harvey in the museum way earlier in the 90s comic. I hate this character and the entire council now. You'd think they would be punishing Shinji for zapping the school clock ahead an hour, instead of being totally oblivious to him and punishing her for trying to do something well-intentioned. She also decides to pick a fight with Sabrina for flying a broom without a license. If she knows about that, how in the hell does she not know that her professor gave her permission to do it? Sabrina doesn't want to get her in trouble by telling her that. Thankfully, she won't be disciplined for these actions, only given a warning. At least she's not literally being put on trial to be court-martialed. And it was only one person chewing her out, in a calm, annoyed manner. Still, she's done so many things to abuse her power, like make an entire town love her and torment Amy a lot. At this point, it can't possibly be a part of the series canon that witches get punished for abusing their powers. Even if this was a brand new canon, there's no way that spell freeze would have been the first time she ever abused her powers, and so she gets let off with a warning. I can't possibly take this idiot seriously if this is all she's gonna complain at her for. Isn't it immediately obvious that it doesn't matter if Sabrina doesn't have a broom flying license because she could just warp out of any danger with her broom? And it couldn't be that hard. The broom would fly exactly as she'd want it to. She's told they'll be keeping an eye on her record. I hate them now. Why her and not every other witch? Hilda's told to go to her interview in 10 minutes, and she unnecessarily glares at Sabrina. I wish they didn't even consider her. Is every major plot development in this comic gonna be completely forced? Sabrina doesn't tell Hilda why she flew the broom either. Why did she have to be ridden to fly a broom without a license? I always assumed she already had a license for flying it. Who would ever think you'd need a license to fly a broom anyways? This is a blatant conflict ball to get her own aunt to yell at her. She says that since she's not the first kid to break the rules, they're only focusing on her because Hilda's running for council. Since when has getting on it always been her dream? Sabrina thinks it wouldn't be fair if Hilda won't get to go in the council because of her actions. I'm so bored. Can characters stop talking already? Can Sabrina just use magic and have a silly plot full of stuff happening already? I would take that any day over being overwhelmed with dialogue 99% of the time. Why are they wasting an entire page on this? A story with mostly dialogue isn't taking advantage of it being a comic. She says she'll behave, and Hilda thanks her. I doubt she will behave. If she stopped abusing her powers, that'd make for a pretty boring comic. I'd hate if she never punished Amy again. Another page is completely wasted with Sabrina angsting. I don't really care. Let me guess, she's stating the obvious. Shinji looks like a selfish opportunist by thinking that if she's upset because of Harvey, this will be the perfect opportunity to ask her out. My time is wasted with them eating pizza at a restaurant in their school uniforms together. Did the comic really have to keep the fact that they have school uniforms if they drop other things? Out of nowhere, though it comes off him flying away with the dragon in the last comic, Shinji reveals that he's had a bunch of complaints from the council himself. I'd rather see stuff than be told about it. Also, it makes the council look ineffective as an antagonist because why does Shinji still have his powers? Why is he still a human? He asks her out, and there's no explanation for why Sabrina's happy to agree when even a character in the story assumes that she won't because she's already got a boyfriend. And in fact, she angsted about this kind of thing, but now she's fine with it. There's another entire page of boring as hell dialogue where a council member gets a truckload of exposition in one panel about events in her country, and she doesn't like that Sabrina's been insulted for breaking rules. Sabrina does at least angst about betraying Harvey, but explains that she doesn't want to turn down a concert to that band. Apparently Shinji's blue hair runs in the family. One time was bad enough. It would have been more believable if he dyed it. Why in the world am I seeing any scene from Shinji's point of view without Sabrina or a member of her family in it? I don't care about this. Why are they being expected to take a magic taxi home after the concert? Isn't it immediately obvious to everybody that they could just warp home? The writer really thinks we're stupid. And it turns out Shinji got the idiot's ball because he asked her to the concert without having any tickets. And he's gonna rely on the off chance that he could buy extra tickets from a scalper outside the concert. Why doesn't he just use brainwashing to guarantee that at that point? Because he's already doing something illegal. He found an opening and went for it and gave him and her a little zap for a speed boost just in case. Sabrina complains that they could get in trouble and reminds him that she's supposed to be staying out of trouble. He doesn't care about her nearly enough to be trustworthy if he's happily getting her in trouble. He's arrogant that everything's gonna be fine. He says that no one's gonna notice unless she stops yelling so loud. But they're surrounded by people. Logically, all of those people around them would hear her and they'd keep staring afterwards. Instead, the art only draws 2 of them, and he says there's lots of people here and no one from the council would come 10 miles of the concert. Isn't it obvious that the council can see every witch's actions from anywhere? How else would they know about everything that happens? Wouldn't he know that? So they would know about all this, and both of them would be punished for it. Maybe don't have the concept of a council punishing witches for abusing magic at all if you immediately write yourself into a corner and realize that you can't have them be punished every time. Because that would be too restrictive of the fun main character. Multiple pages are wasted on them enjoying listening to the concert, when it could have been just one panel. I can't hear what's being sung, so why? She thanks them, and all of the magic taxis have been taken and they should have left the arena sooner. Then he decides to get her in trouble again by deciding to fly with the broom. Why are they so brain dead? How are they such worthless idiots? It's immediately obvious they could simply warp home. He thinks this place is so secluded that no one will find out. And how does he expect to be able to protect her? This writing is such garbage. At least Sabrina does refuse to risk it. Why does he doubt that the council's watching her every move? Obviously that'd be the case for every witch. How could he be so ignorant? She takes offense to him calling her paranoid, as I wonder why he doesn't offer to fly with her on something other than a broom, so that they wouldn't get punished for it. They could make anything fly. Why do they even bother having a broom flying license? Why would people even bother trying for a broom flying license? Or is it only called broom flying license? And it really applies to every object that you can fly with. Why don't they just fly themselves instead of flying on an object? Wouldn't that be just as easy? He would go for a romantic vacuum ride with her. She doesn't want to go with him, and he doesn't take no for an answer. So why is this guy one of the main people in the love triangle that's supposed to be about self-indulgent escapism? He refuses to be understanding and calls Harvey a wuss out of nowhere. And he flies away, leaving her alone. I'm just confused by him acting this way. Why doesn't he warp her to her house? I hope we're not ever expected to sympathize with them again after this. It'd be completely out of touch of the writer to continue pushing Shinji as a legitimate love interest after this. He acted like a worst case scenario of how people would think Scourge would act on a first date with Fiona. What the fuck? Why does Sabrina think that she can't teleport by herself? She did it in the second issue of this comic. How stupid does the writer think we are? How stupid is this writer that she considered for even a single second that this was acceptable? Sabrina's been teleporting since the start of the series. This is only being written for complete idiots who can't notice any of the problems from the blatant disregard for continuity. The writer is just hoping nobody else will notice because they're so distracted by all the drama. But I hate drama when it's completely forced like this. She considers calling Hilda for a ride home, but figures that she'll get mad at her for being woken up to help out her niece. She doesn't want to tell Hilda what happened, because then she'd tell her not to hang out with Shinji anymore. Sabrina assumes that Shinji doesn't want to hang out with her anyways, so she calls Hilda. Since when does Sabrina do this much thinking before making a decision? She's been impulsive for literally the entire franchise. Isn't it wonderful for the pacing in the earliest stories that she wasn't doing this? Think of how much more boring the 70s cartoon would be if she stopped to think for a long time every time she used a spell. I read on TV Tropes that Sabrina does a lot of moralizing and thinking about consequences in the novel, specifically because of executive meddling forcing her to be a better role model. That's not Sabrina. But at least she's actually using her brain. It's not fun though, so it's not worth it. I'd be happier with her not being an idiot here, but I'm too distracted by her being idiotic enough to forget that she can teleport. It's like the writer momentarily forgot or stopped caring about the fact that she's a witch and wanted her to be super relatable to her by having her aunt pick her up. We see a flying car, so much for relatable. She says she doesn't want to talk about what happened. And Hilda thankfully is a good aunt by saying there's no need for her to apologize. She also doesn't demand her to explain. Considering how this comic is, that's out of character. She's happy she called her because it was responsible. Instead of just telling her she could have warped home, she ends up telling Hilda everything that happened. At least we aren't told everything she said. She's relieved that Hilda wasn't furious with her. I am too, because that's how she would have acted in the animated series. She was happy that she was honest with her. Boy, there sure is a lot of time spent on Sabrina monologuing about how she's feeling. That's about as entertaining as watching paint dry. Does the writer think I won't be able to figure out how she's feeling without this? Isn't she just stating the obvious? It's like the writer needed to be told, "You're not writing a novel." After she thinks Shinji hates her, go figure Shinji calls her. At least he apologizes. Not just for calling so early, but for pushing her and insulting her. He's right, he was being a creep. And out of character. You could introduce another Warlock love interest for her, and replace him as the love interest. It's not original to have the Warlock love interest for Sabrina turn out to be a bad person. He better not be written to risk getting her in trouble ever again. That'll only prove me right that he should have been written out of the comic after that. Instead, they keep this desperate ratings trap going for more drama over which guy she'll choose. Even though the guy who used to be clearly more compatible with her has suddenly been derailed to be terrible. He says he'll always be her friend. Yeah, I totally trust them. She thanks him and feels better. Says that the concert was awesome, and her aunt tells her to go to bed already. And she talks as if she has to be a grown-up to want someone talking on the phone to go to bed when she's trying to sleep. So why is Hilda trying to run for the council and not Zelda? Considering how she was in the sitcom, Zelda would make way more sense instead of being immediately confusing. Tanya Del Rio was a shit writer in the Sonic comic. She was responsible for Blaze's catastrophic introduction where she got kidnapped somehow and fought with Sonic for no reason, and did a terrible job drawing Nicole. So I have no idea why she was hired to write so many issues of this comic. I don't know if she's a fanfiction writer too, but the writing is so unpolished that it wouldn't surprise me. It's so arbitrary that suddenly Sabrina hasn't gotten a license to fly a broom yet, just so that there could be conflict. Why is the series going backwards? This is just boring and disappointing to the point where it makes me sad to think of how many issues there are of this. This issue was about Sabrina going on a date with Shinji, just for him to suddenly be derailed into a jerk who didn't get the tickets to the concert first. And for some reason, both the characters completely forget that they can teleport to and from a place. Just for more drama. Nothing relevant really happened before that. Hilda wants to start running for the Witches' Council all of a sudden, and that's it. Everything before that was just pointless padding. This was boring. There was way too much talking and not enough happening.